Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, July 25th, 2025. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Epstein's siege on Trump continues unabated. Meanwhile, it's day 2 of meetings with Trump's former defense attorney, now number 2 at the DOJ, with Ghislaine Maxwell. What could they possibly be talking about? The world watches as widespread starvation in Gaza as a result of Israel's man-made famine. Meanwhile, France announces it will recognize a Palestinian state in September. Germany, perhaps, may soon join them. Venezuelan deported to the El Salvadoran gulag, suing the U.S. for wrongful deportation. And the FCC greenlights the Skydance Paramount deal as South Park, de minimism of Trump's member, spreads like wildfire. Kathy Hochul opens the door to New York redistricting as national Dems look to Maryland, Oregon, and Illinois to potentially pick up more seats for the midterm. Federal prosecutors in LA failing at getting indictments versus protesters. Lastly, now a new report, Musk shut down Starlink service as Ukraine retook territory from Russia. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is Friday, Casual Friday.
Very casual Friday.
Where's Emma?
Hello,
oh, there
Sam.
she is. Okay.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Saw you on Chris Hayes last night.
I was on Chris Hayes last night talking about the South Park stuff. And we'll get into that a little bit. I do want to say that we'll get into that because, Saul has been saying the catchphrase from the South Park stuff over and over again. We will cover that later. I had some mixed feelings about the South Park guys. That is vestiges from the Iraq War days when they were still sort of, I guess, knee deep in libertarianism, except for the anti-war part, where they just thought it would. The idea was to mock people who are actually in some way against the war and arguing against it, but certainly
history
happy
proved
with
them
it.
right.
What's that?
Is it history proved them right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's good for them to do it. We'll talk more with Mehdi Hasan. Oh, did I mention that Mehdi Hasan's going to be on today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm already losing it. It's too early in the show for me to lose it. Yeah, we'll talk more about that. I mean, I really do think it's any type of public showing of resistance to this administration becomes more and more important as we're living in a nascent authoritarian society where, I mentioned this on Hayes last night. People are nervous about. I mean, even when you got back from your honeymoon, the question of do I strip all my social media off of my phone?
I took precautions, to come back into the United States. We saw what happened with Hassan Piker.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is this is what you do when you live in an authoritarian state. You start to censor yourself on things like social media or because of what you're afraid the government's going to do. And so much of the stories that we've been covering have been, since the beginning of this administration, from the universities. Columbia just paid off the Trump administration in various ways, monetarily and in terms of policy and in terms of like punishing students. And at one point you wake up and you start to take stock of these things. And it's not just a question of him being a bully. It is the use of the government apparatus to at least change the way that people think or express themselves in public. And, I don't know what other definition you need for these type of things. But we'll talk more with Mehdi about that. But one element of this, the authoritarianism that we are find ourselves in this country is undergirded by a religious fundamentalism. And this has been around. I mean, back during the Bush years, when we talked about these things and talked about the level of which our government policy is a function of religious fundamentalism. We saw it back then with pharmacists deciding that they weren't going to hand out birth control, or the Secretary of State or the clerk in Kentucky, I think it was, who has incidentally refiled a case with the Supreme Court to reverse marriage equality. All of this religious fundamentalism is sort of bundled up in with Trump. We've had since then legislation called RFRA passed, which basically was allow religious freedom for fundamentalists, which we have religious freedom in this country. The question is, are you excluded? Can you abstain from following laws that are specifically about civil society because of your religious beliefs? Are you can you participate in those professions? I mean, it's one thing for a religious person to say, like, I'm not going to become a doctor because I don't want to have to perform legal abortions in this country. That's perfectly within your choice. But can you get licensed by civil society? Can you receive funding? Can you operate on what civil society has built and then just ignore our laws? And that's certainly what we're seeing in an aggressive way now. This is a town hall in Jonesboro, Tennessee. An anonymous woman who's a mother last week was talking in this town hall. Watch this video.
I just found out that I'm pregnant again. I've been with my partner for about 15 years, though we're not married. I just had my first visit, and that provider told me that thanks to that act, they were not comfortable treating me because I am an unwed mother, and that goes against their Christian values. I'm lucky enough to live in a part of the state where I can seek care across state lines, and that's what I'm doing, traveling to Virginia for my prenatal care, scared out of my mind that I will go into labor and not be able or have to deliver in this state with a provider who feels that that child's life is more valuable than mine. While we do love and want this child, I also have a 13-year-old, and I can't leave her behind. I call Marsha's office twice a day. I'm either blocked or she has all calls going directly to voicemail. I've never even reached a staffer. And when I contacted Bill Haggerty's office, I was told that he's not obligated to listen to his constituents. Love that.
Yeah.
So there you have it. I mean, this is, this is happening in Tennessee, but people are, these are all models for how the federal government's going to operate. And because she's a woman who clearly had sex outside of marriage, because she's a single mom, the state has decided that she doesn't deserve the same rights as a woman who has been married. That's what it comes down to.
Just to underline that, because the audio was a little bit unclear, but she said, because I was an unwed mother.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is how, I mean, the Commonwealth Fund did this analysis where they looked at states with abortion restrictions and states that don't have or have less stringent abortion restrictions in the wake of the overturning of Roe. And they just showed that the states that are most restrictive with abortion are also considered maternity deserts. And the states that have abortion access are something like 25% more in terms of maternal care that's available for people. And because when you attack abortion and you attack women's health care or health care for people who can get pregnant, it is a war on the entire clinic, basically. And then it extends into other forms of like religious authoritarianism or fundamentalism. And with the Republican bill with Medicaid, rural areas are also going to be affected by this. Just in terms of maternal care more broadly. So you have the war on any provider that is providing an abortion via state restrictions. And then you also have the Republicans on the federal level gutting Medicaid, essentially, and hundreds of rural hospitals are going to close. This is like when we talk about eugenicism and how decisions at the top affect people below. Like, this is basically saying if you're poor and you're in a rural area, you're shit out of luck.
I mean, we know the cost of childcare is so expensive pretty much everywhere. So we're telling a mother that she needs to go across state lines to get care. Okay, I guess just have the 13-year-old, stay home by herself, put some pizza rolls in the oven?
Yep. I mean, this is where we're headed. It is all part and parcel of the coalition that got Donald Trump elected. It is, and the days in which we look to a specific state and say, well, it can't happen everywhere. I think hopefully people understand that, of course it can. That's the plan.
And abortion restrictions are punishment for that. That's how religious fundamentalists view it. And it doesn't just stop at people who need abortions. It's also going to be about IVF or getting pregnant outside of marriage.
Prenatal care.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about I know it's silly to talk about hypocrisy, but this just goes to show you that it's not just about abortion. It is about trying to control women. And if you can justify no prenatal care for the unborn fetus, if you can justify that because the woman is unmarried, we are so far away from the idea of valuing life. This is about religious fundamentalism. It is about patriarchy. It is about maintaining a discipline over women and what they do with their bodies, to the point where, and that's why birth control is on the table for these folks. Because, I mean, if you can deny prenatal care, you could certainly deny birth control to an unwed woman.
I mean, and this is also why we talk about things as rights and why it's so important to enshrine things as rights on the federal level. Because when you have cases like the cake maker that, the right-wing organization funded that case to go to the Supreme Court. And if they want to discriminate against a gay couple and not make a cake for their wedding, that when you start to go down that road, it sets a precedent for, say, private medical providers to make determinations about who they will and will not serve based on their so-called religious values. And especially, again, in these rural areas where there's already these medical deserts and it's just going to get worse over the next 4 years. This is life and death.
Yeah,
All
don't
right,
forget that woman in Georgia. Did you guys cover that? Who was kept alive on a table after being only 8 weeks pregnant because she wasn't allowed to have an abortion, I guess, in death.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, we
Just
were
rotting on a
just
table.
rotting on the table, and the baby was born, but the mother was dead.
That was because of a heartbeat act.
That's what God would have wanted.
And we necessarily have to do what God wants, or their God, specifically their God. In a moment, we're going to be talking to Mehdi Hasan, editor-in-chief and CEO of Zeteo News. We'll be wrapping the week, but we'll also be talking about his Jubilee surrounded video, which was, in many respects, I think, sort of a bit of a train wreck because there were a bunch of fascists blocking the train. But we will talk to him about that. Before we do, a couple of words from our sponsors. Right now, headlines and frankly, probably your mailbox are chock full of reports of data breaches. We also know there's tons of regulatory rollbacks to protect our privacy and information. Delete Me is here to make it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online. Fact is, we're all at risk. You've gotten these emails. Oh, sorry, all your information is gone. Here's 6 months of a personal identity service, and then you're, SOL. It's not like the information goes away. And what folks do to steal your ID or your personal information, they will combine that with stuff that they find online or they buy online in the dark web, and then they can just go to data brokers and get all other sorts of stuff, former addresses, your current address, your phone number, maybe your emails, and they combine this with stuff they find in the dark web, and then you're done. Delete Me knows your privacy is worth protecting. You sign up, provide Delete Me with exactly what information you want deleted. Their experts take it from there. And what Delete Me does is they'll send you monthly personalized privacy reports showing what they found, where they found it, and what they removed. Because these data broker sites, they repopulate. And so the stuff gets pulled down, then they pull it back up. I've been using personally Delete Me for probably a decade at this point. And, my reasons, not just I want to protect my ID essentially online, but I also don't want a lot of information about me out there for obvious reasons, particularly in an era like this one. And it has been really a godsend in terms of feeling secure about this stuff. Take control of your data. Keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners, you get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you join deleteme.com/majority. Use the promo code majority at checkout. The only way you get 20% off, go to joindeleteme.com, joindeleteme.com/majority. Enter the code majority at checkout. Joindeleteme.com/majority. Code is majority. We'll put that in the podcast and YouTube description as well. Also sponsoring the program today, my favorite sponsor, that being sunsetlakesebede.com. Use the code left is best. You get, I get my fingers off that, 20% off with the code left is best. Sunset Lake has all sorts of products. If you haven't visited Sunset Lake recently, check it out because they have new stick versions of salves. They have tinctures to help you sleep, tinctures for your pets. And believe me, I've been leaning on that quite a bit lately. Well, actually both, to be honest with you. They have focus gummies. They have gummies with THC. They have gummies with Delta-9. They have gummies to help you relax. They got smokables, keef and pre-rolls. They have fudge and coffee. They have all sorts of great Seder products. And the great thing about this, these guys grow this stuff up in Vermont. They use third-party testing, so you know exactly what's in there. They provide it for you. They use integrated pest management. They do not use pesticides. They have great business practices and farming practices, and they are movement partners, having donated tens of thousands of dollars to things like strike relief funds and Planned Parenthood and refugee resettlement and carceral reform. They've involved themselves in mutual aid. Just a great company, great product. SunsetLakeSabadeh.com. Use the coupon code LEFTISBEST. You get 20% off. All right, quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Mehdi Hasan. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program Mehdi Hasan, the CEO, founder, and editor-in-chief of Zeteo. Mehdi, you've had quite a week. Thanks for joining us. We got a bunch of stuff I want to talk about before we get to, obviously, your Surrounded, which I think is now at like 7 million views on YouTube. God knows how many millions on other places. But before we get there, this week, the reports out of Gaza, to the extent that we get them, after the onslaught of targeting and killing hundreds of Palestinian journalists in Gaza, is that the food situation, the starvation, has become just critical. I want to play this clip from a British surgeon who is in Gaza, just to get a notion of what we're dealing with, and then let's talk about who actually tweeted this out. Play this clip.
You were saying to us that your colleagues that have tried to help, who've tried to take baby formula in, for example, have been prevented from doing so.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time on the pediatric intensive care unit because I had patients there. Appalling malnutrition, and a lot of doctors I know who have taken in formula feed because they knew there was such a shortage. None has been allowed in by the Israelis since the last ceasefire.
You go through a checkpoint, you get searched as a doctor, and if you've got any baby formula in your pockets or in your bag, they will confiscate it from you?
Very specifically confiscating that. Nothing else. They confiscated every single carton of formula feed that these doctors were taking.
Can you think of any reason other than that they just don't want you to give it to the babies?
We're very cautious in what we take in, because we know much will be confiscated, and certainly they always say anything that could be remotely used as a weapon, such as surgical instruments, we can't take in. But I cannot think of any reason why they would confiscate formula feed.
Oh, I can think of a reason. But they know exactly what they're doing. But this was tweeted out by Hillary Clinton, which I don't know how much we've seen.
It wasn't, apparently.
No, it wasn't?
When I said Hillary, I was talking about the pregnant mother clip was tweeted by Hillary
Oh,
Clinton.
okay. Geez, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. Well, nevertheless, there is a lot of evidence that there is a sort of been a much less resistance or hesitance or much greater awareness that has been expressed by people on the center left, if you will, or center about what's going on in Gaza these days.
Very much so. And, you know, the Omar al-Akkad book title comes to mind. One day, everyone will always have been against this. And I think we're seeing that in real time now. In the old days, you waited for, Iraq war finished, and then, everyone started to make their move and say, oh, I was always opposed to Iraq. Like Donald Trump pretends to have been opposed to Iraq. I think now with social media and with this genocide just never ending, people are doing it in real time and thinking we won't catch them. It's not just Hillary Clinton, who was very supportive of Israel. Her husband, if you remember, Bill Clinton went to Michigan and lectured Muslims there about the Bible and the importance of supporting Israel before the election. That really helped Kamala Harris. But Amy Klobuchar this week went on the floor of the Senate to condemn starvation in Gaza. The same Amy Klobuchar who a couple of weeks ago was smiling in a photo with Benjamin Netanyahu in D.C., the man who's responsible for the starvation in Gaza. So there she is. She didn't hide like Cory Booker tried to hide his face. She's very happily smiling there. So I think we've got to talk about how cynical this is. Look, I welcome anyone who changes their mind. I'm not somebody who says, the more the merrier. But let's just recognize the cynicism behind it. They didn't just wake up and suddenly realize this is bad. I do think it tells you a lot about how the arguments about defending Israel have all fallen apart. Because the arguments, if you remember, Sam and Emma, after October 7th was right to defend yourself, Hamas tunnels, they're not really killing civilians, it's Hamas human shields. None of that works when a baby is starving to death in front of your eyes. None of that works when a surgeon is saying, they won't let me take baby formula in. No one except a depraved sociopath can defend not taking baby formula into Gaza, blocking diapers and formula from Gaza. So it's indefensible. Literally, I know we throw around the word indefensible, but it's literally indefensible. No one can do it. You have Amit Segal, very pro-Netanyahu Israeli journalist, wrote a piece for the Free Press, for Barry Weiss's Free Press, pro-Netanyahu journalist saying, hunger's really bad in Gaza. We need to acknowledge that. So I think everyone now knows what's going on, and it becomes an issue of A, are you going to do anything about it? And B, are you going to pretend that you were on the right side rather than the wrong side of history?
Oh, well, I mean, people begin to pretend. The Free Press, that same outlet that's not so free, it got its start with the funding of Andreessen and Horowitz and the like. This is what is supposedly free on the right-wing media ecosystem. They, in May, just published an article about how the famine in Gaza was a myth. Like, we have to welcome these voices, because anything that ends this genocide and this horror show, I mean, we'll take it. But it's hard for me not to feel, honestly, immense fury at seeing this change here, because the starvation is not new, but it has reached, and it seems like maybe this is the tipping point. Basically, this critical point where they're at a stage right now of irreversible famine. People's bodies are starting to consume themselves, their organs. When you get to that stage of hunger, especially if you're a developing child, it's irreversible. They could. It also affects like generations. Even if you survive, the damage to your genes, it will affect their children if they're able to have children. And so I think we're going to start seeing mass graves, and there are people trying to get out ahead of it. And that's the fury that I feel is just how cynical it is, because they know what's coming. And once we know this true death toll, it is going to be in the hundreds of thousands.
100%. And I think, you've seen Piers Morgan try and switch his position on this and make the point, rightly so, but he could have made it a year ago, that they're not allowing international media in. And there's only one reason for that, which is they want to hide the graves. They want to hide the starvation. They want to hide, human beings, as cynical as I am about, human beings and people living in Western democracies. But I do believe in the genuine goodness of people. And I do believe that the American public, if they could see what was going on, not just on Instagram via brave Palestinian journalists who are being killed and starving to death, but if their favorite Western war correspondent, white person, were to go into Gaza and show them what was going on, I do think they'd recoil and be repulsed by this and be outraged that there is a bipartisan support for this stuff. What's interesting is that doctors have been saying this for over a year now. Yeah. Have been going into Gaza, and God bless those doctors. Our modern day heroes are the doctors who've traveled from the West to do their best, not just to save lives, but to bring back the message. Not having an international media presence in Gaza means these doctors, aside from the Palestinian journalists who are being killed, but who are dehumanized and treated as Hamas falsely, put them to one side. It is Western doctors who have come back to the UK, the US, Canada. We had Dr. Yasser Khan from Canada on my show with Naomi Klein recently, talking about what they saw with their own lying eyes. And I think that's been crucial. You played that clip from Nick Maynard. Nick Maynard is a white, British, posh dude. You heard his accent, super posh Englishman from Oxford University Hospital, a leading surgeon in the UK. He is saying that when I went into Gaza, they took the baby formula out of my pockets. He has said this week that I treated people who were shot by quadcopters, mothers while breastfeeding. I mean, this is evil that is Rwanda-level evil. This is stuff that, we have to exhume Milosevic's body and apologize to him for trying him as a war criminal if we don't try all the people involved in this crime.
Yeah, I think we had a clip earlier this week of members of parliament making this argument as well about complicity in these war crimes. And of course, the United States is funding this. I just want one note on that free press that Gurr was on, I guess maybe a podcast where he was talking about the famine. They pulled it down. The free press did. And then apparently they put it back up behind a paywall. Which gives you a sense of both how they are embarrassed by what they're doing, but also do not want this to be reflected. I imagine it's both a function of ideology, certainly when it comes to Barry Weiss, and maybe funding. But it is. Do you think it's just because? We've interviewed those doctors as well. And as over a year ago, more, there has been no shortage of this information. If you wanted to see it, if you did not actively turn away from it, what has changed to the extent that anything has? Is it just that it's so clearly about the child? I mean, Cindy McCain has been making these reports for a year. Biden had to have a fake float, dock to deal with this aid. I mean, what is it just a matter of time? I mean, because the Iraq stuff happened when it was like there was a political price to pay.
Yes.
And then people came around, following 2006. Yes, it's been a waste.
It's a great question. I don't honestly know the answer because I can't get into the minds of these people who are so depraved that they couldn't speak up for 21 months, but they speak up now. I don't know what you call someone who is ethically challenged and emotionally disturbed by images of starving children now, but weren't 3 months, 6 months ago, weren't concerned by babies losing arms and legs. The biggest cohort of amputated children in modern history is in Gaza. That happened over the last 21 months. We've seen that with our own eyes all across social media and some television media. And I think, is it them trying to get out ahead of this stuff, trying to kind of get on the right side of history too late? Is it just pure guilt because they know they can't justify the starving of children? You can try and justify in your head the blowing up of a school because, well, that was Hamas's fault. They were under the school. Maybe that's what you tell yourself, but you can't justify starving a child. Or maybe it's something more coordinated. Maybe the cynic in me, maybe the conspiracy theorist in me says, that when all these Western governments come out together, the British government, the Canadian government, the French government, put out this statement, maybe that's done in lockstep with opinion formers and commentators and the great and the good in our elite media. Maybe it's coordinated. I don't know.
I think it's just about what we're about to see.
Yes.
That's
what's scary. They know more than we do about what's about to come out in terms of sheer numbers and deaths. And your point about the irreversibility of this, the people who are experts on this stuff say, even if you flood the place with aid now, it may be too late for a lot of people there.
And I think that there was so much racism and continues to be, but in terms of like Israel relying on blocking Western journalists from coming in is deliberate in the sense that if you don't hear a posh Englishman, a white guy, somebody on CNN saying this, you can dismiss it as Hamas, terrorism, whatever, savages. I think that, and also even the framing and the manufacturing of consent that every Western outlet has been complicit in calling this a war and not a genocide, and also repeating the death toll that I find, like, at a certain level, when we keep saying this death toll, it's misinformation because we just don't know. That's all that can be confirmed. But by using that smaller death toll, by calling it a war, by blocking out like Western journalists who would have credibility with people who are inclined to dismiss Muslim people or Arab people or whatever, it's now hit a point where, okay, but starvation, we can't call this warfare. And maybe that's where it changes in people's minds, is that they bought into the most moral army in the world thing, and now the starvation is like, oh, this must be really bad now.
Let's turn to and I should just say there is a big rally for Gaza at the United Nations today. So folks, maybe we can post that information at the blog. But I want to turn to what's happening domestically. Sort of an extraordinary thing that I think it's the first time we have seen a week or two in a row where Donald Trump has lost the ability to change a media narrative around this Epstein stuff. I mean, we may look, he's sending his former defense attorney to go negotiate with Ghislaine Maxwell. This could be just the start of like we're going to change the narrative. This is all about Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or whomever it is. But what I find interesting is you look at the polling numbers. Republicans haven't necessarily abandoned him over this, or at least not as of like a week ago. But the media ecosystem is different on the right. And Trump, in many respects, is so bound by that. And so many of the elected Republicans are so commingled with that world that it is... It's interesting how this is like catching him up. And I also wonder, and I want your thoughts on this, is are we at that point where people on the right, and particularly the sort of like some of the more moneyed interests, are like, we've gotten really everything we need from Trump. Everything else is, Russell Vogt has got this and it's just going to chug along, but we don't need him to be as politically strong. And now we're looking to 2026 and even 2028.
I'm not sure on maybe that's the thinking amongst some. Now they've got their quote unquote big beautiful bill. They got their tax cuts. They've got, Doge. Maybe that's I'm not sure that's directly linked to Epstein though. I think the Epstein thing has taken on a life of its own. It is the first scandal. I've been following Donald Trump for 10 years. And this is the first scandal that I know of that has been led by his own supporters, right? It has nothing to do with liberals or leftists. In fact, the Democrats have been AWOL and continue to be AWOL because, of course, Bill Clinton's name is somewhere in all of these Epstein-related files. He went on the plane 27 times. Who knows which other Democrats are linked in. But I tweeted this yesterday, which is when the story came out in the New York Times about this birthday book tribute, and the story came out in the Wall Street Journal about the cartoon, and CNN did the story about Epstein being at the wedding, at one of Trump's weddings. My question is, where the F was all this reporting in 2016, 2020, 2024? The American public went to the polls 3 times and elected Donald Trump 2 out of 3 times without knowing any of this stuff. So it's a complete media failure, number one. And number two, a complete failure by the Democrats. No Oppo research, or if they had it, they sat on it because they knew their own figures would get burned by this stuff as well. And I think it's a real problem now if they allow Trump to change the narrative. We know what's going on. Keith Edwards tweeted just earlier today, the Democratic Party influence, and I totally agree with his analysis. We know what's going to happen now is that Ghislaine Maxwell will almost certainly come out and give some Democratic Party names, a Bill Clinton, some billionaires, and Trump will pardon her and say she told the truth. She exposed this ring, and he will be scot-free. Even though we know now that he took, I think, 1,000 DOJ, FBI, other internal agents to scour through the records and look for one thing: his name. Right? They were tasked with finding Donald Trump's name in the files. These files that supposedly don't exist and can't be released, but were written by John Brennan and Barack Obama. So we're looking at possibly the biggest cover-up in modern American history, which will make Watergate look like a walk in the park. Even by Trump standards, this is a massive cover-up. We think, Russia and COVID and all the other scandals he's covered up. This one's huge. And the irony is they led this scandal, right? The only reason we even talk about Epstein is not because of the Majority Report, not because of Zeteo, not because of Joe Biden. It's because Dan Bongino and Kash Patel spent much of their time in opposition between 2020 and 2024 talking about Epstein. J.D. Vance went on Theo Vaughn and said, we need to release the list. And now, the chickens are coming home to roost. Whether Trump can get away with this is the big question. I interviewed Mick Mulvaney recently for my Al Jazeera show, the former Trump White House chief of staff. He made a good point. He said, look, Trump said recently that MAGA is whatever I say it is. And the Epstein controversy is a test of that proposition. If he gets through it, then it's right, then it's true. The tail is not wagging the dog. Trump is still in charge. If he doesn't, then MAGA has grown beyond Trump.
Well, it's just also what I think Mullen is probably seeing, and some of the folks on the online or like the pro-Trump influencers, is that this is not the right-wing populism isn't a thing, and they just gave a big major wealth transfer to the very top with this big ugly ass bill, and they have to do these kind of performative populist gestures to keep up the facade. And what the Democrats purposefully closed their eyes to because they were protecting Bill Clinton or other associates or world leaders or potential intelligence ties, when they abdicated their Oppo research on this story for over 10 years, was they ignored the fact that story is basically, in my view, a stand-in for anti-elite rhetoric, this disgust with people at the very top hoarding wealth and getting away with unspeakable crimes while the rest of us kind of have to toil around. And so the Democrats didn't engage with that, unfortunately. When it could have been a layup, the Republicans do, because it's not really material and they don't have to, it's a populist story that doesn't have to involve them actually taxing the rich, for example.
Also, let's not forget there is an anti-Semitic element to this as well, which is Epstein is this Jewish billionaire in charge of a child sex trafficking. That drives a lot of the QAnon MAGA stuff. That doesn't mean the rest of us shouldn't be concerned about it. It's a huge story, independently of the anti-Semitic fringe element to it. But that is what's driving a lot of the MAGA folks, right? The QAnon folks, they're obsessed with this stuff. They don't actually care about child sex trafficking or human trafficking because they elected a president who is a great gift to human traffickers in the way he deals with immigration. In the day he steals children from their parents. So he doesn't actually give a shit about any of that stuff. But look, I would say this in terms of kind of the populism angle, yes, they ratchet this stuff up as podcasters, right? You've seen the reporting about Bongino is very concerned about his reputation were he to return to the podcasting world. I love the fact that the deputy director of the FBI is
That's amazing. That is amazing.
The deputy director of the world's apparently leading law enforcement agency is concerned about his podcasting rep for when he goes back to the private sector, which he knows will be soon, right? No one laughs.
I think he's the leaker, but that's a whole different thing.
Pam Bondi thinks he's the leaker too. Apparently they screamed at each other in the Oval Office. So I do think that, this is what they have. Whether Trump gets away with it, I don't know. If the Democrats let him get away with it, they should shut down as a political party.
Well, no, wait a second, Mehdi.
If he pardons Ghislaine Maxwell, the worst child sex trafficker on planet Earth that we know of, that will be insane. By the way, multiple women at the trial testified that she didn't just traffic, she was involved in the abuse. She was at the site and not just complicit, but active in the abuse. So if he pardons a woman like that, it's laughable to say that they've cared about this issue. And one last point I would make, just on the mainstream media, Michael Wolff interviewed Jeffrey Epstein. Michael Wolff is not a reliable source. But Michael Wolff got tapes, released audio to the Daily Beast in October of 2024 of Jeffrey Epstein saying, I was Donald Trump's closest friend for a decade. That got zero pickup in our mainstream media. Can you imagine if the worst child sex criminal of our lifetime had said, Joe Biden, I was close to him? I mean, it's insane, the media asymmetry. The fact that the mainstream media did not cover that story in October of last year, I think, is one of the great unforgivable sins of the 2024 campaign, and there are many.
You know, the way our media works is that it needs to have advocates for stories to carry it and to feed it. I mean, you know, it's sort of like it's akin to the difference between the British system of justice and our system of justice. Our media functions as is a adversarial. They need to have, and let's put up this tweet by Chuck Schumer. This is, you talk about the Democrats making hay of this. I mean, this is just and this is one of those things where it fits in line with their entire sort of like MO of like, well, we can't take a position on an issue because we just got to say Trump is bad on it. We don't have we don't want to put a specific position out there on an issue because then we could get criticized for it. But Chuck Schumer, under no circumstances should anyone from Trump's DOJ be allowed to privately interview Ghislaine Maxwell. The conflict of interest is glaring. It stinks of high corruption. It was literally, he tweeted that out hours after it happened. A. B.
Schumer, fast mover.
He does not mention that it's not the DOJ that's meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell. It is literally Trump's defense attorney who's now just happens to work for the DOJ. I mean, this is nuts. It is nuts. We spent 3 weeks talking about Loretta Lynch bumping into to Bill Clinton on a tarmac.
But you're right. It is about the advocacy position because we talked about them bumping on the tarmac because Republican politicians and Fox hosts made a big thing out of it. And if Democrats and democratically aligned folks in the media are not making a big thing about the fact that Trump is using his DOJ to push this agenda, he's using it. Most people have never heard of Todd. I mean, the genius of the Republican Party is they will take people who you have never heard of, who no one will ever, and make them household names, right? And that is the genius of the Republican messaging machine. They can take anyone, a low-level Obama staffer, and turn them into the biggest conspirator in modern American history. Meanwhile, Democrats are struggling to even make Trump cabinet officials boogeymen right now for the general public. I mean, let's take one person, RFK Jr., health secretary, a deeply evil individual. What he's doing in the health field is bad enough, right, with vaccines, with Gavi, with global health. But RFK Jr. is in pictures with Jeffrey Epstein. How many Americans know that? How many Americans who know RFK Jr. know that? Because the Democrats are not making a song and dance about it. Because they know that Bill Clinton will be thrown back at them. The answer to Bill Clinton being thrown back is, who gives a shit? Bill Clinton's not the leader of the Democratic Party. Bill Clinton's a former president. Someone did a funny tweet I saw saying, oh no, Bill Clinton's in the files. I'll have to take down my Bill Clinton flag and my Bill Clinton keychain and take the stickers. Like, there isn't a cult of Clinton on the Democratic side. So who cares?
No, well, I just want to hit this one point about the names. Yeah. It was during the first Trump administration. So somewhere between 2016 and 2020, Dana Loesch, who was a former NRA, worked with Dan Bongino, talker. She may still be doing. I remember she had one of the FCC people on and used as a verb. I am surprised that when you were working for Obama, that you were not Vince Fostered. Now, Vince Foster was a Clinton advisor in 1993, and over 20, almost 25 years later, she can just use him as a verb without any explanation, and her audience knows that. That's how deep they go into these and how they make sort of like celebrities out of like these in these conspiracy worlds, and it just in a way that, we don't do that because I think it's just sort of, we have some level of shame, but our politicians should be out there pushing these things harder so that the news will follow them.
Also, the Vince Foster thing isn't true, whereas
it's not true.
Trump's lawyer is Trump's lawyer, and is like, there's always a thing about both sides, and I know it sounds so self-serving, but one thing's true and one thing's not. Let's not forget that when we do the both sides.
And this is 8 months ago. He was the defense attorney. Not even probably.
He shouldn't even be at the DOJ, let alone going to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell.
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but I think the dirty, like the problem here is that the Democratic Party as constructed is a party of liberal institutional maintenance that is uninterested in engaging in that kind of politics. Chuck Schumer resents the idea of doing politics, right? Yes. He wants to be somebody who's in Washington, negotiating, cutting deals with Republicans. But the dirty work of partisanship, Democrats are unable to do that, in part because they have one hand tied behind their back with golden handcuffs, whether it's AIPAC or other moneyed interests.
Emma, you're being unfair to Chuck Schumer. Did you not see his taco video?
Oh, Trump. I mean,
about Iran. I mean,
right.
Just amazing.
No side deals. No side deals with Iran. No diplomacy with Iran. War with Iran. That's what our Democratic leader wants.
That's really indicative. I mean, it's a problem they have with immigration, and it is a problem they had. The most aggressive he gets is to go to the right of Donald Trump on whether we should be bombing Iran, essentially. I mean, that is a real problem. Just, stripped of ideology, just in terms of what are you offering people? But all right, let's turn to your surrounded thing. I wanted to talk a little bit about the South Park stuff, but we can get to that later in the program. But as you know, I had done one. We had touched base beforehand. I
blame you for everything, Sam.
Well, listen, I thought it was a good idea to do because, I know your skill in debating, and I had it had never occurred to me that they would put you up against people who have absolutely no desire to debate the things you're talking about, but just essentially go up there and espouse, virulently fascistic talking points. It really was disturbing. I broadly speaking, before we get into it, like what your sense of that, because I can only imagine that if, they put Charlie Kirk there and somebody came in and just like, look, someone who is, an accelerationist or, someone from the Weather Underground, there's nothing to debate here between these two people with these fascists. There's no debate. You had claims. They knew what those claims were.
Well, they knew the broad topics, and they didn't really engage with them.
But also the Jubilee people, too.
Yes, the Jubilee people knew. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Charlie Kirk, and what would it look like the reverse? To continue what we were just discussing, the three of us, about both sidesism. Somebody did a really good tweet about how Jordan Peterson comes on Surrounded, and he gets 20 pretty liberal college student atheists who engage in good faith about arguments around God and Jesus and the Bible. I go on Surrounded, I get 20 fascist white supremacists. Like, that is America right now, right? The far left is not the far right. The far left wants healthcare. The far right wants Nazism. I'm so tired of this. Like, there's two extremes. No, there's one extreme, and it's really extreme. And I think one of the few redeeming features of that Surrounded episode that I went on, and that something like 7 million people have watched insanely, is that it's very clear what the far right looks like, what they espouse, what they're about. And it's not just old white folks sitting in Alabama. These are young influencers in LA. Let's just be very clear about that. What we're dealing with, this is a minority, yes, but a growing, vocal, tech-savvy minority. And I think we've got to be clear about all that stuff. It was disturbing to sit there and, I went in, let's just be clear. I went in because A, I like a good debate. B, I thought it might be a good platform to try and, expose some of this far-right nonsense. C, I mean, I was worried about an ambush or a setup, and I did speak to you, Sam, because you had done a fantastic job earlier this year, and you and I talked about it, and I watched your episode, and you had, I think, about 3 or 4 nut jobs. In fact, one of your nut jobs was on my show as well. Yep. Mm-hmm. She was a repeat nut job. And you had about, I think it's fair to say, 3 or 4 really out there crazy people on your show. I think it's fair to say.
I mean, 2, I think, that made it into the.
Who were like kind of openly white nationalist and openly questioning reality itself. I had about 15 out of 20 who had those views.
It was
and that
nuts.
was a shock to me. And people keep saying to me, I've been doing a bunch of interviews. The first question everyone asks me is, how did friends and family been texting? How do you stay calm? Because I don't often stay calm. I'm a very passionate person. I can lose my temper with the best of them. I get in very heated conversations. And I'm amazed. And the only answer I can give as to how I stayed calm is, I think I just was stunned. I think I was just didn't quite get that this was happening. Is this really happening?
Yeah.
Are these people really saying this stuff? Is this a joke? That was my kind of reaction in the moment.
Well, to me, from the outside, what was disturbing is one that, you recorded this after Sam did. It seems like they have an understanding of what goes viral. So it could have just been, we're going to keep ratcheting up and putting outright Nazis on this episode because the algorithm favors as inflammatory content as possible. And this is part of why we need to regulate this stuff. Not going to happen over the next 3.5 years for sure. But I also found it a little bit scary that they went so hard with outright Nazis against you as somebody who is both an immigrant and also a person of color. Like, was that a sense that you got when you were sitting there? Was that it was almost like that added to the inflammation of it?
So I took an armed security guard with me to the recording, and in hindsight, he and I both agreed we should have taken more because we didn't realize what it would be like. Look, you'd have to ask Jubilee about what their vetting procedures are, but clearly, if they did vet these people, they didn't do a very good job. And if they didn't vet these people, then it fits to your point about ratcheting up and just understanding that each show needs to get crazy. As I say, I think from the progressive, quote unquote, progressive or non-Republican side, there's been Sam. I think Destiny did one. Now I've done one.
Pete Buttigieg.
I believe there's a few more. Sorry?
Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, Pete, I forgot about Pete Buttigieg. So clearly it's escalated and ratcheted up in terms of those people. But I think the way from the very beginning, like I think it was, the second guy or third guy was like, I have to stay calm. And where are you born? The third or fourth guy was like, I'm a fascist. Then you get to the baseball cap guy who's like, get out of my country, I'm being replaced. It's a constant theme. And again, these are not just rando folks coming along and venting. It was very clear to me as someone who spends time watching the far right that these guys, they were hitting all the greatest hits. It was white genocide. It was great replacement. It was General Franco. Like these were not accidental references. And that's what's quite scary is that these people are very well organized, well coordinated. They have their talking points. Social media has amplified them hugely. And the critique of me going on Jubilee, which is a legitimate critique, is you've helped amplify them further. I get that. It's a completely legitimate argument. I mean, counter argument is if these people are out there, it's better to expose and humiliate them, as I think it's fair to say I did. But I get it. I get the kind of arguments that are swirling online for the last few days about, was it the right thing to do? Would you do it again? Do you think you got through to anyone? My argument about getting through to people, and you guys know I wrote a book about debating, and I make this very clear in the book, is when you debate someone, you're not trying to change their mind. No one's that naive. I'm not trying to change those fascists' minds. I'm trying to change the mind of people at home, the low information voter, the person who's accidentally come across a YouTube video. I should say, by the way, I mean, all of us are, Emma's probably, Emma certainly is the youngest of the three of us here, but like, you have to be really, really young to appreciate the pull of Jubilee. I didn't realize how big it was till my kids, till my nephews and nieces were telling me, oh yeah, we all watch Jubilee. And then since the episode came out, I've had friends of mine texting me saying, our kids are watching this, asking me, our kids are asking us, do we know you? Because they're all entranced by this video. So the pull it has on Gen Z and teenagers is huge.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said. I will add there is a third option on the vetting, which is they did their vetting, they did it well, and this was a conscious decision, which I think, I don't know about you, but my advice to anybody who, in our position who would contact me and ask what to do, it would be you tell them, I want to have a debate on these topics. And if you're going to bring in people who don't care about the Constitution, don't believe in democracy, want an authoritarian state, don't want to have a debate about immigrants other than to say they shouldn't be here, period, end of story, then I want my assurance. I want A, that you're going to have people who are going to actually in good faith debate me, and B, I'll sign that consent form when we're done with the show. So there's some type of leverage, because
it's such a good point you make about the Constitution, because one of my arguments was that Donald Trump is defying the Constitution. And obviously I had all these arguments about the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 14th Amendment. I came prepared with my receipts. And the response is, well, we don't care about the Constitution. Good. We should.
It wasn't just one person who said that.
Yeah,
they all said that.
Well, I think one of them tried to engage, but the rest of them didn't give a shit. And they care about the Second Amendment, of course, but the rest of the Constitution, they don't care about. And that becomes a fundamental problem, because I don't do bad faith debates. I've made I was at MSNBC 3.5 years. I had a policy with my team. We're not going to have election deniers on the show. We're not going to have climate deniers on the show. And when that guy, Connor, or whatever his name was, said, I'm a fascist, I had to say, look, I don't debate fascists. And I was looking at the producer saying, we need to get someone else in the chair, because I'm not continuing this. I have a no fascist debate platform, which I stand by. But obviously, if somebody had told me beforehand, you will be debating people who identify as fascists or push white supremacist talking points, I would have said, no thanks, I'm washing my hair.
Yeah, and incidentally, that's the guy who claimed that he was fired because of his appearance there. I have no problem with someone being fired for those views.
He doesn't believe in the Constitution. He doesn't believe in free speech. So.
I mean, there is no protections for a whole host of things in this country. More importantly, you can get fired if you're gay. You can get fired if you're trans. You can get fired, if
you're pro-Palestine.
If you're pro-Palestine.
Although he didn't get fired, apparently, is what I'm seeing now.
But the other thing is, it turns out he was fired in January.
He retconned it to make 30, 40 grand off of credulous buffoons on the far right who gave money to him.
But you have to retrofit it, because how else can you talk about how the left is so mean for you if you don't have this inciting incident that turns you into one of the worst people of all time?
Let's play a couple of the clips. I found the Catholic nationalists. I mean, I'm sorry. By chance, you don't get 20 people to come on the show and get 2 who are Catholic authoritarians. This is the thing that I think also that I think is important to mention. The far right moniker implies that these people are marginal within the conservative movement, and they are not nearly as marginal as even someone on the left, who within the context of this country, who says we should have single payer healthcare. Like single payer healthcare guys are much more marginal within the movement than a guy who says, well, I believe in we should, no immigrants in the country, or Catholic authoritarianism.
100%. And this is the point I will bang on about till my dying days. Like, A, the far left and the far right are not the same in what they want from the country or the extremism. But B, the far left doesn't control the Democratic Party, despite the constant socialist, communist claims from Donald Trump. I wish. Like, Mamdani is a kind of unicorn in that sense. It's bullshit to say, as you say, that the single-payer folks or the lefty folks have any control. Look at what happened to Bernie Sanders. And yet you look at the far right, J.D. Vance follows dozens of far-right white supremacist accounts. In fact, I'm told, I read this online, that the guy who this fascist guy, or one of the fascists I debated, I can't remember which one, they're all blurring into one, is followed by a leading Republican running for Texas AG. So a lot of these folks are very, very much embedded in the Republican Party, these white supremacists. You remember the Proud Boys took over parts of the Miami Republican Party a couple of years back. Like the far-right white supremacists, the Oath Keeper, Proud Boy, Groyper wing of the Republican Party is very much enmeshed, especially at local state levels of the Republican Party. There's no debate about that. It's just the Republican Party is now a white supremacist party with a Republican fringe, and not the other way around, as the saying went in the past.
And I would add that, a lot of what these authoritarians were talking about was really pulled, it sounded like to me, from Curtis Yarvin. And of course, Yarvin is J.D. Vance's, sort of North Light. Or North Star, I should say. But let's play the econ guy, because this I found to be one of the more amusing ones. You couldn't write this better in terms of his economic arguing. And it turns out he's a guy who spent a lot of time on the von Mises Institute website. But here he is.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Mehdi.
What's going on, man? Nice to meet you. All right, so first before I start, I need to know what you mean by good. I can talk about the economy, I can talk about culture, I can talk about all those things. I need to know what you mean.
All of them. I'm saying immigrants are good for the economy. They're good for culture.
Lower wages are
they're
good for the economy?
society. Where's the lower wages?
What do you mean, where's the lower wages?
Where are the lower wages?
Yeah, so you can
What's
look
the
at
basis for saying there are lower wages?
Sure, so you can look at like the STEM industry. It's been in like a complete and total recession. There's been tons of studies like from the Economic Policy Institute that shows that like companies like Tesla, companies from like Silicon Valley, they engaged in mass firing of workers, around 35,000, but then they hired around 12,000 H-1B visas. And it's kind of just standard economic thinking.
It's not standard economic thinking. The vast majority of economists and economic studies suggest that there is a negligible, if no impact on wages over time from immigrants. In fact, your colleague mentioned earlier, construction, there is actually evidence in construction, yes. But in some industries, in some areas, there is an impact. But overall, no. In fact, a study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that migrants since 1965 have raised wages and raised innovation.
Who's that by?
National Bureau for Economic Research.
No, hold on. That's where you publish studies. I'm asking
yes, I didn't memorize the names of the authors.
Yeah, I know you didn't. Right?
Can you give me the authors you've got?
Yeah, hold on. The study you're talking about is from Giovanni Perry, and what he did is he didn't account for aggregation issues.
You put workers on a job site and you give them no protections whatsoever, then yes, you're going to have bosses that are going to exploit them. That is not an argument against immigration. That is an argument about forcing people into the shadows and keeping them from getting the rights that they should get as workers. So this is not an argument against immigration. It is an argument against exploitation. And it's certainly practiced against U.S. citizens by managers and bosses. But if you have a group of people who have no rights, the answer is not to kick them out of the country, because we're going to see when we need houses built, we're not going to have people to build them. The answer is to give them rights and protections on the job site. But let's let this guy continue here.
Hold on. The study you're talking about is from Giovanni Perry, and what he did is he didn't account for aggregation issues, nor did he.
The vast majority of studies.
Let me speak,
please.
Yeah, thank you. Right. So listen, he didn't account for aggregation issues, right? And when you look at like the spatial approaches, what all these economists use, you're not accounting for the fact that when immigrants come into an area, natives leave. If you look at an occupational approach, where you look at the specific firms that immigration is going into, like Kim ETAL 2013 did. You find a net negative impact when there's a 10% increase of immigration. You find around a 0.5% decline in wages when it comes to the specific occupations they're going to.
So
all your studies are flawed.
So 0.5%. Weigh that up against what I just mentioned from the Congressional Budget Office, which is a massive boost in GDP per head, which you're not counting for, massive increase in tax revenue, immigrants actually funding the deficits and debts by paying way more in taxes proportionately, including undocumented immigrants. And what's interesting about wages is I'm in a room full of, I don't know what to call you anymore, conservatives, Republicans, fascists, I don't know. One of you has proudly said that. One of us proudly, correct. I'm in a room full of correct people, but do any of you actually care about wages? Because for example,
I actually do,
for example, do you support raising the minimum wage?
Absolutely, and you can't do that when you're bringing all these people coming into
That's not the reason the Republican Party blocks the minimum wage. You think Republican politicians don't vote for an increase in minimum wage because they're worried about immigration?
Did I say I voted Republican? Did I say I voted Republican?
Well, I'm in a show that was called 25 far-right Republicans.
That doesn't mean I'm going to support every single Republican candidate.
So you and I, So you and I, let's agree. We both support raising the minimum wage. Yes,
100%.
$7.25 since 2009. It's lost 30% of its value. If you care about wages, we should be raising the minimum wage in this country, not scapegoating migrants who aren't the cause of low wages in the country. You know who's causing low wages? Billionaires, millionaires, and people who won't pay fair wages to their wages, regardless of whether you are an immigrant or a native.
I get the monologue right now. Let me respond.
You had one. You had one with your one study that had a 0.5% impact. Go.
Yeah, and your study sucked that you didn't even know who wrote it, right? So let's get back to the point, right?
Because I don't need to.
And there it goes again.
The majority of studies say that wages are not impacted by migration.
The majority of your studies are flawed. That's what I'm telling you.
Not my studies. Right. Neither of us are economists. It's the economist studies.
Don't assume who I am.
Are you an economist?
I could be.
But are you?
I could be.
Are you?
I'm not going to tell you.
Are you?
I'm going to major in economics, right?
Are you an economist?
No, sorry, that is the funniest line of the entire show. Are you an economist? I'm going to major in economics. I mean,
he hasn't even majored yet.
No. He's going. That's his plan. He hasn't declared yet. He's
like
going.
The kid that said, "I'm a future army soldier."
I got to say three quick things about Joseph, because he's been putting out videos on social media. He's loving his profile this week. He thinks he got some stuff right. A couple of things. One is his big thing. He came with all these kind of studies and economic policy institute. He didn't actually engage with what I was talking about. He assumed I was quoting a study from Giovanni Perry, which I wasn't. I was quoting a study from 2024, the Hoover Institution folks, that was published in the NBER. But what's really funny, that's the first point. The second point is that Republicans are always like, oh, Democrats, they're so emotional. Women, they're so emotional. This guy was shaking the whole time, was so like coiled up, ready to explode to talk about wages. And the last point is he doesn't give a shit about wages or immigration or the economic argument, because ultimately it came into, we didn't get to that point in the clip, get out of my country. When I said I'm an immigrant, he said, I want you out. He said that multiple, you'll be the first to go. So you can dress up all your arguments with as many studies and wage graphs as you like. Ultimately, these folks are white supremacists.
Yeah, I mean, that is the point. Obviously, you hire a lot of people. You are people are getting a lot of wages from it. I mean, you know, even in the most crass and most charitable view, he would say, like, you can stay because you're actually increasing wages for people and expanding in an industry, incidentally, that is contracting. But if this guy was really concerned,
Muslim, not Catholic, brown, not white,
100%. And if he was really concerned about wages, he would say we should unionize everybody, because we know the studies. There are studies where there are certain areas and like certain industries, because of the lack of protections that immigrants get, that wages can be in some way suppressed. But unions increase wages by a far greater amount across the industry that they're in, regardless of whether they're unionized. And if you put all these people in a union, I can absolutely guarantee you wages would go up not only for them, but for everybody in that industry.
But imagine being so naive on the far right. I mean, this is what's so funny about these credulous folks who come to this stuff online. Imagine believing that Paul Ryan would support an increase in the minimum wage if he knew it was going to native white Americans and not foreigners. Imagine believing that.
Well,
that,
I mean,
that
you
was
would
also
have
the bizarre. How does immigrants suppress the minimum wage?
Federal minimum wage that Republicans vote against year after year.
Because they base it on this false notion of scarcity. And this is why we talk about how right-wing populism is not a thing, is because they artificially create scarcity to pit the working class against one another along racialized lines, or whether we're talking about the middle class versus the working class. Unfortunately, the Democrats do that too, where they're not talking about it as, you know, bosses versus everybody else who's making a wage, which would create more solidarity. But obviously, this is a whole different angle here. They create, we have plentiful wealth and resources that could raise everybody's wages, but they don't want to redistribute wealth because they want this insanely just corrupt system of not taxing the rich to continue.
I want to play this Catholic nationalist, because I find this absolutely fascinating. The argument that, you know, there is such a lack of historical understanding. Catholics, when they first came to this country, whether they were Irish or Italian, were not even considered white. And there doesn't seem to be any concept of that. This guy doesn't understand that, like, 60 years ago, JFK nearly lost because he was a Catholic. And
real quick, which Catholic nationalist are you referring to? Brian, the one with the awful beard, or Connor, the fascist Catholic?
Oh, I think of the beard one, actually.
Yeah, the beard one was creepy.
Yeah, okay, I think he was in on mine, and I don't know if he actually spoke to that at that time. But play this guy.
Please return to your seat.
Thank you, man.
How's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Actually a fan. I see you a lot on Piers Morgan.
Okay, thank you for watching.
Yeah. So my argument is that Americans are what is a nation? A nation is a geographical location full of people who have some things in common. So I think some of the things typically in history are going to be like race, religion, ethnicity, language. These are some of the things that we have to have in common in order to actually have a functioning civilization, especially in self-government. I'm not necessarily a giant fan of self-government. I'm a Catholic nationalist. I'm not a fascist. You have to have at least some things in common.
I'm sorry, hold on. So, he's claiming that we need these things, despite the fact that our society, to the extent that there's problems in the context of our society, it's because these people have an issue with the way that our society is functioning. But B, then he's not even really that into it because he really wants an authoritarian society run by the Pope, I guess, unless it's a Pope he doesn't like.
He also opened with, "I'm a fan of yours," but ends the conversation with, "I should get out of the country." So we're a fan.
I want to watch you from afar.
From a distance.
Good, continue.
Who actually have a civilization, and the immigrants, especially illegal immigrants that come into this country now, disrespect us. They hate everything that we believe. They don't even speak our language. I watched, after Trump got elected, I watched an interview of an illegal alien woman crying and about getting deported, and the entire interview was in Spanish. That is a spit in the face. It's disrespect. They don't care about us. They abuse our system.
So you've gone from a teleological argument into just a bunch of series of wild, unsubstantiated
I'm asking
claims.
you, what is
I don't accept any of those claims that they hate everything we stand for, and I don't accept. Well, I'm not going to deal with the teleology. I'm going to deal with the false claims that you made. There's no what's your basis for saying that all immigrants or all undocumented immigrants hate everything we stand for? It's funny that you said you're a Catholic nationalist. How did most Catholics get to America? Irish Catholics, Italian Catholics. Immigration. Much of the people coming across the southern border are Catholics. Yeah,
I know. I don't.
So it's really funny that you say you're a Catholic nationalist, but Catholics came to America via immigration.
Yeah. So
immigration is good for America. You and I can agree. Otherwise, people of your faith wouldn't be here.
No. Well, we were here on this side of the world, in this continent, from conquest. We came over here, and
but the big surges of numbers, as you well know, because you're a smart guy, Italian, Irish immigration waves, Catholic immigration waves.
Okay, yeah, and I'm not even claiming.
Are you against those?
I'm not even.
Were you against those if you were alive?
I'm not even claiming that
immigration
is bad.
A lot of people were against those.
I'm not claiming immigration is bad in all cases at all times.
What is your claim?
My claim is that immigration, especially now, and especially for foreign people that have nothing in common with us,
it's funny.
Pause it for a second. Okay, wait a second. This is, and I don't believe that you thought that he's that intelligent. The aggrievement that they all hate us, yet this woman is crying about having to leave. Like, just hold those two thoughts simultaneously. Like, I've decided to immigrate to a country where I hate everyone there. And then also I'm very upset that I have to leave.
Yep.
And the fact that all these immigrants come from foreign countries, it's like what is turning this stuff out for these people? It is just pure on some form of racism or xenophobia. I mean, we can get specific, but it is just a hatred of the other. It's all that's going on here.
And take a step back. What's driving the racism and xenophobia is something very personal and psychological. Something's wrong with these people. There's a loneliness, there's an insecurity, there's problems. You know, they are people looking for scapegoats. They are looking for a all-encompassing conspiracy to blame their lives' problems and the country's problems on.
You're getting spit on because you have to hear Spanish?
Crazy.
I mean, that is just
well, that's Stephen Miller. I mean, it's
It is very Stephen Miller. This guy had Stephen Miller vibes, I guess.
Well, the Gene Guerrero's book talked about how basically he was in a wealthier part of Santa Monica, Southern California, had to move schools, and then he ended up at a school where there were some kids that spoke Spanish, and it just drove him crazy. And he would go and he associated basically his father's financial trouble and having to move schools, and took that insecurity, which is just so small and petty and pathetic, and channeled it into a hatred of Latino people. And we see that literally in policies to this day. This small man still motivated by those original insecurities, and targeting Los Angeles first with this Gestapo thing too. It's all that aggrievement that is basically antisocial. Yeah.
Well, Mehdi, you did a great job. Held you a little long because I could talk about this stuff for ages. I encourage people to watch it, but maybe take a little Xanax beforehand, or
Sunset Lake.
Yeah, exactly. You did a great job. Really appreciate you coming on. We, of course, will link to Zeteo. You guys are doing great work over there as well.
Thank you very much.
Really impressive what you've been able to accomplish in such a short time there. So thanks
Appreciate
again.
It, guys. You guys led the way in independent media. I always say that. So thank you so much, both of you, for having me on.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Mehdi. All right, folks. I guess it's time for us to take a quick break and head into the fun half.
Yes.
We just got to be careful. No foreign languages, so that we're not spitting on our audience.
There's these emotions that speak to white nationalists, like respect and pride, and I think that is about their sort of arrested development. And really, like, this is where JFK and the what can you do? Like, what is your obligation to the country you supposedly feel pride in or want to be respected towards? Is it just to sit there and whine about, like, oh, there's brown people that are speaking a different language? It's so disgusting and small.
Yeah.
It really is. It's fascinating. All right. We're going to take a break, head into the fun half. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, we spit all over you. And some people like that, actually.
Some people are into it.
They hop to all over us.
So if you have a humiliation kink, become a member.
Yes.
You're putting your bare feet on me.
We'll head into the
this is too much for me.
Felice Media. Is that what it is? Fun half? I don't know. Folks, you can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show, free of commercials, you also get the fun half. And then if maybe we should add a tier where we will actually come to your house and spit on you. That's going to be a very
can I be excluded from that, please?
That's a super high tier.
Okay,
but
you get to
maybe
do that.
like the discount one.
Like a desecration. You go ahead.
Speaking of spit on, we will play at least some audio from the South Park stuff. I mean, the absolute abject humiliation that Donald Trump must feel when his penis was actually recorded and placed on television. I can only imagine.
They went to great lengths to make it as accurate as possible.
Not that great a length. Actually, it was rather...
Well, I was referring to the length.
Did you purposely serve me up that way?
I was talking about length and width, not necessarily
girth,
length.
You mean? Oh,
yes,
no.
girth.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, also justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. You can get the Majority Report blend. I had one around here. Matt, Left Reckoning.
Yeah, Left Reckoning, we got Alex Salmon on talking about the Roosevelt Hotel and the immigration processing that we can do as a country, and just decide we're embarrassed, or Democrats decide they're embarrassed that actually we do have the capability to, say, recognize asylum claims and process them without just turning people into the desert or into concentration camps. So check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning. We've got a Sunday show for you this weekend.
See you in the fun half.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
Fun. What is up, everyone? Fun.
Nomiki.
You did it.
Fun.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Fun.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false. No, I'm sorry. Women's
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.